Do we have any book authors here? Just a question. We do have some. Okay. And what about screenwriters? Okay, more of those. And what about people who talk to screenwriters about things like acquiring your intellectual property rights in the screenplay, book, or whatever? Okay, so we're not talking on the producer side here. You're film people, but we're not talking about people who've actually optioned things. But let me go into this. To some extent, I realized that we call this thing, which is like a 8 or 9 page thing that's called an ebook. So if anyone wants to option this, I'm available. If you can make a feature film that has an inciting incident and all that stuff out of this, God bless you. Anyway, some of this stuff is somewhat dry, and I want to leave a lot of time for questions because, first of all, I don't know if any of you have accessed this. I also have a YouTube video about this same thing. You can just go to YouTube and search for Chase Lawyers. You can either use a space, but YouTube decided we needed a space in between Chase and Lawyers. That's not the way the card reads. It's not the way the trademark reads. But what are you going to do? It's YouTube. So you can search either way. Anyway, let me talk a little. I've got to bore you for a moment about copyright. And by the way, Brian, if there's a video, are we videoing? Yes, because I saw the lights. Thank you. I would love to get snippets of this for our social media stuff and all that. Always thinking about marketing, say my younger lawyers in the office. Anyway, copyright. Okay. One of the things that someone who owns something, if you write a screenplay, without registering it or anything else, you own the copyright in the screenplay. Now, if you've done it in conjunction with someone else, and you don't have what's called a work for hire. Does everybody know what a work for hire agreement is? Does anybody know what a work for hire agreement is? Okay, I have to give you a little bit of background, and the first time I see someone yawning, I'll stop. But the work for hire agreement, if you're someone who owns a company, everyone who works for your company is doing things that immediately belong to you. That is, if they're full-time employees, you're paying their Social Security holdback, and you're withholding their taxes, and you're saying, yeah, you got to be here these days. It's, yeah, you can stay home and work for 2 days, but you got to come in 3 days, or whatever the current thing is happening. But the point is that those things are usually incidental to a full-time employment. And if someone is your full-time employee, you own what they do. I mean, you may not own the novel they write that night, but if you're a plumbing company and they come up with a new, a new sink trap or something like that, you own it. Your company owns it because they're the employee of your company. But if it's someone who's your neighbor who comes up with the sink trap and he starts talking to you and he's not a full-time employee, she is not a full-time employee, then in order for you to own the rights to the sink trap, you have to get what's called a work for hire agreement. And the work for hire agreement basically says, well, I'm not really a full-time employee, but for purposes of this job I'm about to do, we're going to make believe that I am. And I'm leaving out a lot of little complications about the timing of that and what the courts have said about it and all. But generally, they're upheld. And they're certainly upheld in the filmmaking business because film, audiovisual works, are one of the things that are covered by this. So you definitely, as filmmakers, you're safe because the Hollywood studios made sure that filmmaking was one of the things that you could own, even if you were dealing with independent contractors. So, okay, now that we've said that, so you own the copyright in something. You certainly all own the copyright in your own life story. I mean, I own the copyright in this, which is, as I say, not a very good vehicle for a film, but still. You own it. Now, one of the things you own as the copyright owner is you own the exclusive right to make what are called derivative works. And I won't get into all the sort of fair use and derivative works, when do they meet and all that. But you own the right to make derivative work. So if some film person, like the people who are sitting here, comes to you and says, we think your book is going to work out as a feature, or I think I can get some funding for this, that's the scenario we're talking about. Whether you're on one side or the other, that's the scenario we're talking about. It's if I want to acquire as a filmmaker the rights to use someone else's copyrighted material. And again, it's always good to register. You get certain advantages if you ever have to go to court, God forbid. But you own the copyright as soon as you create it. Picasso owns the copyright in his painting. People who open their mouth and or play an instrument own the copyright in the sounds they make. Whenever you create a piece of by the way, logos too. If you have a company and you have someone who's creating a logo for you and they're not your full-time employee, which they're not going to be, you better get a work-for-hire agreement if you want to own the logo. Same with your website, at least the interface, the design of your website, which is a creative process. Web designers will never stick a work-for-hire clause, well, in my experience, never stick a work-for-hire clause in their own contracts that they present to you. So you have to do that, because otherwise you won't own the design of your own website, which is not a good thing. Okay, and they can also take it and create one that's really similar to yours the next time they get a job like that, because they own it. You don't own it. Okay, so derivative works. Now, so the producer comes to you, or you come to the author of a book, or a wonderful piece of work like this, or it could be a long article, could be a life story, which everyone has, and wants to own your life story to make a film. Now, first question is, should you just sell it outright? And that is one of the few no-nos in this, because you will alienate for all time. It's called an assignment, because we lawyers like to mix you up, so we don't call it a transfer or whatever you would normally call it in real life. We call it an assignment with a G and all that stuff. So if you're the assignor, you are basically transferring your film rights. You may even be, and this is unfortunate, transferring your entire copyright to this person. If you haven't been here this morning and heard this, you shouldn't do that, because you will never get it back. If there's ever any interest in whatever it is that you've handed over, it belongs to someone else now, and you can't exploit it. I mean, you have nothing to do with it anymore, because it's a piece of property. It's as if you sold a car. You sold your car, if it breaks down tomorrow, that's the other guy's problem. But you no longer can drive that car. And so you no longer can enjoy your former copyright in this thing. So don't do that. What you want to do instead is you want to try to negotiate an option agreement. Now, this gets a little bit complicated. I'm going to try not to get you too far into the lawyer weeds on this, because then you will drop off. But it is basically what the producer is going to do. What you are going to do is say, look, I want to rent the right to sell this for some period of time. Let me just repeat that. I'm going to it's as if you were leasing it's just like leasing a piece of real estate with an option to buy. It's the same word even. I mean, you probably have heard about those things, whether you've ever been involved in one or not, but it's the same thing. So it's 12 months, 18 months, whatever the producer can get out of you, the copyright owner. I'm going to exploit it. I'm going to try to market it. I'm going to see if I can get financing, which is the big problem, as you all know as well as I. I'm going to see if I can get people to finance this. And then if I can, then I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to, quote, exercise the option that I've got. So these agreements will have, the first part will be the option part, where it's some period of time for some small amount of money, usually, by the way. I mean, I was struck in negotiating with James Patterson, who's a really Jillian-selling author, for a book called Juror Number something or other. I can't remember now. It's a few years ago. But, his people wanted only $5,000 to option that for a year. And I thought, wow, this guy's, there have been movies made out of this guy's work, and they've been hits, and I can't believe they're doing this so cheaply. So option prices are not so, I mean, if you can offer somebody $500 or $1,000, you can usually get the right to try to exploit, and I hate to use that word because it's politically loaded, but we use it in contracts. And it just covers everything you might do, including making a bobblehead doll out of the main character and everything else that films lend themselves to these days. But in that case, you should try to negotiate a film option agreement now. You can haggle over how long you've got this, Mr. Producer, or how long the copyright owner is going to give you to fool around with this. Usually there's a renewal term to that, which should cost more than the first option, because after all, they're only coming back to you after the year or 18 months because they have interest. So it makes sense for you to want more. If it's 5,000 for the first period, it should be, maybe 10,000 for the second. It's still not a huge, that's just the option. That's just extending the option, the rental. Now, then you'll go into clauses that talk about the exercise of the option, and the price for that is anybody's game. There are no standards here, by the way. 12 to 18 months, yes, is sort of a standard. The low price for the first payment is sort of standard, but there's not a standard price. The higher price for the extension of the option is also expected. So, you don't want to be talking to these people as if you don't know about this. So anyway, the exercise of the option is going to either be stated in price terms, either as a percentage of the good faith budget of the film, which is usually a small percentage, 2%, but it's a $100 million film, not so bad. It'll be stated it could be stated in actual dollar terms. Usually if it's stated in percentage terms, there'll be a ceiling and a floor. But again, not to get you too far into the weeds. Then there's the exercise of the option, at which time you have permitted the film rights to go to this producer, and you wish him good luck. Now, one of the reasons not to just do the assignment, I said that's a no-no, is because in the film option, you're going to get an upfront payment, and you have to, and don't provide the option, or as a producer, you should not be looking for a free option. I don't care if it's just $100, but it's insulting to the creative person who's created the copyrighted work that you're now saying, well, I'd like to option your book, I'd like to option your article, I'd like to option whatever it is you want, your life story, but I don't think it's worth anything, because that's basically what you're saying. If you don't want to provide, so from the point of view of the copyright holder, you should insist on at least some payment. It will also mean that the producer has some, quote, skin in the game, so that it doesn't get put at the lowest priority of this list of 12 projects that the producer is trying to develop, because the producer's got $1,000 into this, and he or she really wants to make sure that there's capital, that there's exploitation of the property, rather than just let it sit there and lose my $1,000. So you want to get it for that reason as well. Okay, so there are any number of things to watch out for. The first one, but again, we don't have, by and large, the people who produced the original copyrighted work in here. If you do come at it from that point of view, and you might, because you might write a screenplay, then you want to make sure that the producer has made some progress. In other words, you can put conditions, aside from making it $10,000 on the extension, you might want to see some progress, if you haven't written a screenplay, some progress toward financing. So, something to indicate that, yeah, I should let this producer have another year or 18 months, and you have to put that in the first contract. Okay, so now the other big no-no is and this is nothing peculiar or particular, as some people say, but it's nothing that relates only to this scenario. You should not do business with someone who makes you feel as if you need to take a shower after talking to him or her. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. There are a lot of, I was on the phone with someone who's got a reality TV idea that's being picked up, it looks like, by at least a producer for one of the networks that would be a target for this show. And he was talking about rejecting someone, it happened to be from Atlanta. The person who picked him up looks like, or he had a meeting with last night at least, is from Lauderdale, so I was glad to hear that. But he said after talking to this guy in Atlanta, he really felt like he was a scumbag. So I'm just using that, using that term, stealing that from, but that's the problem. I mean, it's not as bad in film and TV as it is in music, but there are a lot of scumbags, and there are a lot of fakers, and there are a lot of people who will, say, well, I did X, Y, and Z. It happened to me while I was running the PBS program department, 1,000 years ago. I had someone come to me and try to sell me on trusting him as a producer of a new series because he said that he had worked on the Cosmos series, which is an old series that I had something to do with. Carl Sagan. It was it's where that phrase, misquoted by the way, where it says a billion, where he says billions and billions of stars. I don't think that's what he said. As my memory is that he said a billion stars, which is much bigger and much more accurate, I think, about the universe. So anyway, I found out that he basically had brought coffee to the director, this guy who worked on Cosmos. So you have to be careful. I mean, that was just a puff. That wasn't an actual scumbag move. And I did business with this guy later for other reasons. But people will try to fake it. And you can understand that because it's a field where people always ask you, well, what have you done before? And I'm going to go to IMDb and I'm going to find out. I mean, do that for sure. If you're on the author side, if you're on the book writer side, which you're not. But in any event, you want to make sure that you're not overstating your own credentials. What you also want to do, because that's part of the other person not feeling like he's got to take a shower. And so, you want to be careful. So those are the only real two no-nos. Don't alienate your rights in the first contract with somebody. Get an option on it so that you can get it back if they fail, as most projects, as you guys know very painfully more than I do. Most projects don't get made. And it doesn't matter what city you're talking about, they just don't get made. And therefore the option scenario will permit the original copyright owner to get a reversion, we call it, of those rights. We use all this fancy language to confuse you and impress you. And if you like, I'll say some of them in Latin later so you can really be impressed. Anyway, I would prefer to take questions. I can continue to prattle on, but are there questions to this point? Yes, sir.
What's your take on exclusive versus non-exclusive option?
Have to be exclusive. You won't get a serious filmmaker, or you shouldn't, to take it on a non-exclusive basis, because if you're also providing options to producer number 2, 3, and 4, how do we know we're not going to end up in the same waiting room waiting to talk to the same person at a Hollywood studio? I come in and I've got this property. I really want you to be interested in it, Mr. Hollywood Studio Financial Source. Well, I'll think about it. Says the next guy who walks in says, I've got this property. It's the same property. You don't want that to happen. As a producer, you don't want that to happen. Now, that's great for the owner of the copyright. I've got 5 people running around trying to sell my project. You might think it's great, but it will taint the project if you do it that way. So that puts a real premium on the shower test, and also on your doing a little bit of due diligence if you're the author side, making sure this is someone who looks as if he or she or it might actually be able to get this made. So the answer is, from the author side, you don't care as much. From the producer side, you shouldn't take it on a non-exclusive basis. It's just like someone who lists a piece of real estate again, if you're more familiar with that. I mean, they will always be the listing agent, the exclusive listing agent. So no matter who sells it later, they get a piece. They get a piece of the pie. So you're unlikely to run into non-exclusive option agreements. In many ways, I wouldn't call that a real option agreement. So I have a clear answer on that one. Most of them are going to be fuzzier. Doesn't anybody want to ask me a fuzzy question? Yes.
So I'm speaking as a hyphenate. I'm an actor, creator, and I have been a producer.
Yeah, do you mind just giving everybody your name?
My name's Mary McGloin with Tech Betties. Hello, if I haven't met you, hope to meet you today. I know a lot of us are actor, creator types, and like a lot of people are looking to find deals like Issa Rae or Broad City or High Maintenance or et cetera, where we want to stay involved in the project, maybe as executive producer and actor or co-showrunner and actor. Like, what would you suggest we go about doing to try to get some kind of deal?
Okay. I mean, I also have a short video in that same channel on YouTube on this question, really. It's entitled something about how to make a reality TV show, but it applies generally. What you don't want to do, because it's a waste of time, is just shoot your screenplay or whatever off to a bunch of the networks because you think the networks are right for this. So I've got a home improvement thing. I'm going to go to HGTV and a few of the other, maybe TLC, and a few of the other networks that do this kind of stuff. They're not going to open it. And if they open it, and many of the serious networks will have the rule that they don't even open the envelope. Because if they open the envelope, you may later claim that if they do something similar, that they have stolen your idea. Or you can't really own an idea, by the way, under the Copyright Act. So ideas aren't worth anything. If you just have an idea in the kitchen in the morning, if you start writing it down, you've got something you can actually register. But you can't own an idea. But people often think, well, I'm going to shoot this off. And I shot this off in February of 2018, and here it is, a series on, I don't know, on Netflix in 2021, and it's just like my idea. You're not going to be able to recover on that because they either have not opened the envelope or they can show that it's just an idea and it's the same idea. Usually when people come to me and say it's just like, it's really not just like. It has a car chase scene. That's not just like something else. Or it's got a love story, or it's got a, obviously, which you can't own an idea, by the way, because if you could own boy meets girl, boy screws up, boy loses girl, boy works feverishly and regains girl, you could never make a rom-com. No one could ever make that because they're all like that, right? Hugh Grant, starring Hugh Grant. Anyway, so you can't own an idea. That's just an example of why you can't own an idea, because it would stifle creativity, in fact, if you could. And it's too cheap. I mean, we all have ideas. So the answer there is that you've got to find a producer with whom, I can tell you, I ran a network, right? It was just PBS, so, it wasn't a lot of money to it. It was a great job, by the way. Because I was doing it in the days when there was only CBS, ABC, NBC, and PBS. HBO was just sort of starting. Discovery was just sort of starting. And, if you were an independent producer, like most of you in the room, you only had one place you could go because the news divisions wouldn't accept documentaries and they weren't doing films. They weren't producing films or having films produced. What you've got to do to get to the answer to your question is you've got to do a little bit of due diligence type research. And this is what I say in that little 4-minute piece on YouTube. You have to find a producer that those networks that are your targets have already trusted with producing this kind of thing. Because I can tell you as someone who was on the receiving end of a lot of these proposals, if I don't know you, how do I know that you're really going to deliver the 6th episode of this 10-episode series that I've already announced to the world at the press tour we're going to have on in September or October, and you don't deliver number 6 in time to do the review we got to do, the FCC review, to do cut the promos from it and all the rest of it. It's not as easy as you guys know. It's not as easy as it sounds. Everybody looks at TV and goes, I could do that. I could do that. But it's not easy. And particularly if you're talking about a multi-part thing where you have delivery dates that have to be adhered to so that I can actually promote episode 6 on a timely basis. Back in those days, I'm dating myself, you worried about TV Guide deadlines. Anybody even know what TV Guide is? Okay. Anyway, okay. Well, you're dating yourself. Be careful. So we worried about stuff like that too. But they're still as immediate as most of the media can be now. You still are going to have the need for a network review and all the rest of it. So I have to trust you, and I have to trust someone who's making. If I'm a network, I have to trust someone who's making my inventory for me, that they can actually do it, that they can deliver on time, they'll deliver within the parameters of the length I need, so I can stick whatever the interstitials are, or even more importantly, commercials where I need them. So I'm going to trust you, to return to the questioner, only if you show up in my office with this producer I already know. And it's easy to find out who they are, because you'll go there and it'll say who the production, the real production company isn't going to be the executive producer from HGTV. That's a person who's going to sort of parachute into the production, go to a party or two. Yes, we'll look at what the raw material is and all that stuff, and we'll probably make some edits and all that, and we'll have the right to do that for sure. But isn't really producing it. You and this producer that you will have to ally yourselves with are the producers. And, you're going to have to give up probably 50%. They may want to take it as a shopping thing. Yeah, we like your concept. Maybe you've got a sizzle reel. Maybe you've even got a pilot, as this guy who called me yesterday already had. And so I'll look at all that stuff. So I sort of like it as someone who has produced for HGTV. And I can get the door open to have a meeting with them because they know me. And I produced this. Oh, yeah, you want to also make sure that the series that they produced before has been relatively successful for them. If I've had 3 flops with them, not a good place to go. But, and remember, it's ultimately, particularly on the network side, all about the money. I always say to people in the music business, they don't care, the big labels, Warner and all that, and it's true also of the big financiers, they don't care about whether you make a beautiful film, they care about whether it'll make beautiful money. And that's just the thing we have. I was at PBS for reasons that I really couldn't deal with that as the only criterion. And PBS doesn't have that criterion by and large, although we always cared about the audience. And the only one we ever got the audience we thought we deserved was the Civil War series, which you may or may not even remember, but Ken Burns, who makes great documentaries, it was a big success for PBS at the time. All right, anyway, so I hope that gives you some of an answer. And that's what you're going to have to do. So you're going to have to give up a piece of, you may have already optioned the book. You come in, you say, I've got an option on this book. Here's a copy of the book. Here's the sizzle reel of what I want to do with it, or maybe even a pilot, or not. If you've got the book already optioned, there's something for the producer that you've approached to work with, or to look at, or to evaluate. And if the producer wants to team up with you, then the issue becomes how much control, how much of the revenue are you going to get, and that's all negotiated. I mean, I would say that again, there really is no standard stuff in this. And don't believe, the shower people will tell you that, oh yeah, this is standard. It's all standard. I take 84%, you get 16. And you should be negotiating that, but it all depends on what the strength is. If you've optioned a James Patterson novel, like the one I was talking about, then you're in a pretty powerful position because we know that we can make a film that makes money out of this. So that's a good property to come in with. But again, if all you've got is your own idea, you're unlikely. The point is you'll get entree to them and they won't give you this horrible waiver of all your rights, which the network itself will. The network itself will say, well, yeah, we're happy to talk to you about this as long as you sign this thing that says you have no rights if we steal it, basically. I mean, it's in fancy legal term, but that's what it says. So if you're sending things to them, there's another thing you should do. If you're sending things even to these producers who produce for the networks, you want to have a little phrase in there that the California courts, God bless them, because they're very protective of creative people. More so than Florida, hate to say. More so than anybody. But they, what you want to put in your communications is a phrase like, and you ought to first say, here's XYZ that I've optioned. The XYZ is copyrighted in the United States Copyright Office under TX, blah, 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 whatever it is. So they know, don't screw with it, because it's already owned. It's real property. And I know enough to go and register the copyright. And I spent the $65 or whatever it is, and maybe even asked a lawyer to do it, which raises the price substantially. So there's a copyright in this. And the second sentence says, when I write them, if my client, if you're interested, my client would expect to be creatively and financially involved in the project. You got to say that, because if they then do it and it looks substantially like what you brought them, then the California courts, at least, God bless them, and others will follow to some extent, will say, well, that's a deal. The letter was an offer, the first letter, and all the other things you write was an offer of working with them on this copyrighted property, but only if you're creatively and financially involved. So if you do it, if you do something that looks just like that property, then you agree that you're creatively and financially. Now, you won't have creative control no matter what you do, because they don't, you know, the big money players will certainly not let the first creators, the prime movers, whoever wrote the copyrighted material that is going to be capitalized on by these other parties. You know, Jack Warner, you know, whatever that, Metro, no, that's the wrong, but Jack Warner, you know, Warner Brothers and all that, right? Used to talk about the writers that they employed as jerks with Underwoods. Now, Underwoods, even I don't quite remember this. Underwood's a typewriter, I remember typewriters, but it is a typewriter brand that a lot of the writers that they worked with in LA used to use. I mean, that's what they were doing. But I didn't want to hear from you can read an F. Scott Fitzgerald biography and get this same idea. He went out there, and I've had people like Ken Burns have gone out there, and a guy who was a good friend of mine, David Fanning, who's in charge of the Frontline series, who was in charge, went out to Hollywood because the Hollywood, some Hollywood people saw a potential in some of the documentaries that Frontline had been doing. This is a PBS series. And so he went out there and he came back a few months later. And, you know, again, he was a friend of mine. So we would talk about the Straight Skinny, and he couldn't stand it. He couldn't stand the sort of totally mercenary and superficial atmosphere that he found. No one gave a damn about the content. Again, it was beautiful money, not beautiful filmmaking. And to his way of thinking, at least they'd gone too far. He didn't want to work in that environment. But, you know, he's from Boston. But in any event, that's you have to be prepared to give up creative control. And I have a little paragraph in this ebook that says that you really have to get used to that, because what's happened in my experience is that no matter how many times I tell my clients, you realize you're going to lose control of this as you go into the Hollywood thing, or any feature filmmaker. Will cause you to lose control of the creative aspects. The best you're going to do is a consultation, right? Or you might, if you've got the James Patterson book, even get to, if they're going to make a series out of it, you might get to review and comment on, you know, screenplays or teleplays or what have you. You will not get to control them because, and this is true, what's called the grammar of filmmaking, with the inciting incident up front and all the rest of it, is not necessarily the same as an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel. And that's why, I mean, even someone like him, who was certainly a household name in America at the time, hated being out there and was, you know, serially disrespected. And, you know, what they don't want is you sitting on the set and running up because the dialogue isn't what you had in mind when you wrote your book, you know, or when you optioned the book. They don't want that, and I understand it. You know, they're going to put a car chase in, they're going to put a love story in, they're going to put a sex scene in, all that stuff, and it wasn't in my book. They don't care. It's what will keep the asses in seats, or at least keep the asses firing up Netflix these days. So that's really the answer. So you have to be ready to give away a lot of it. Of course, once you're into it, you want to bargain for as big a credit as you can get on the ultimate, because that's important. That's the IMDb credential. That's all the rest of this. So that becomes part of what you have to bargain for in the option agreement. If you're the producer and you're going, if you're the filmmaker who's optioned it and going to one of these producers for one of the networks, you are also going to bargain for a credit at that point. It's all going to be subject to the network rules and regulations and all that stuff. But you should at least get your oar in and insist on, creative consultant or consulting producer or something like that. So you're somewhere in the credit roll at that point. Okay? So that gives you that. You have a microphone, so
Yeah.
you've got the credential.
Okay. So it's a little bit of a related question to Mary's question, but so let's say you got your writer hat on, you write a 10-episode, hour-long drama, Bible for it, and you're all excited to go, find somebody who will option it, but you're also got director creative urges, and you're in a web series world, and so you decide to do 5 episodes of 5 minutes each as a web series. Does that damage the goods for selling at a larger
No, I
scale?
think, I think that would be regarded as sort of foundational intellectual property, those 5 episodes. They certainly qualify as sizzle reels. A little long for a sizzle reel, 5 minutes. But in fact, even at PBS, we had one thing that I instituted in my department was because we would look at a lot of documentaries that came in. Remember, there was no other place to go for most of these producers. So we look at a lot of documentaries, occasionally a scripted piece as well. And the rule was, as soon as you know you don't want this, hit the glass that's in front of you with something sort of to make it clink. And when there were enough clinks going on, we stopped the video. It was a videotape at the time, but we would stop it at that point because we had a critical mass of people who didn't think we should touch this. So the attention span is terrible. This guy sent me a 3-minute sizzle reel for this the guy I was talking about last night who used the word scumbag. That's about right. I mean, and anyway, you're looking for chemistry. If you're talking about features or really any kind of TV, as I said to this guy, because he and his partner, it's a male-female team. She is always yelling at him about how he screwed up something. And that's part of the chemistry between the two of them. And I said, whatever you do, don't stop that. Be natural. I want her to yell at you. That's entertaining. You're great the way you respond. You sort of, sort of hunker down into your snail shell when she starts yelling at you. It's great. That's, I would say it's good. It's a good idea to do that. I mean, also it's a lot cheaper. I mean, to get distribution and all the rest. I would say that would not harm the prospects. That would enhance the prospects because you also show them what you can do. You show them you can hold the camera steady. You don't do zooms like, sweeps like that and things like that, which amateurs do. So you show them you're a professional, you know what you're doing, and you give them an idea, a sizzle reel idea of what you could do with a longer form, hour-long, 10-part series. So I would say go for it. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Just kidding.
Is your name Mike?
So no, no, but I was hoping it was. So 2 questions, if that's allowed. One, can you talk about the difference between registering with the Library of Congress or registering with the WGA?
Yep.
And then 2, if you were my representative as an entertainment lawyer, what do I need to have in a row, or what do I need to have organized for you to optimally work with me?
Okay. First, the WGA versus Copyright Office. WGA filing doesn't give you any special copyright rights. It does indicate the date as of which you are claiming ownership of something. So it can be of some value, but it's really sort of like the value of the poor man's copyright thing, mail it to yourself and all that. It doesn't really, if you register with the Copyright Office, which as I say is $65, I mean, I sometimes will tell my clients, $65 if it makes 100 million is a pretty good return on investment. So, I mean, even if you have to pay me and it gets up to $400 or $500, it's still a good return on investment. So it depends on how much you believe in it. But the WGA thing doesn't give you, there are certain rights you get for copyright registration. If someone does infringe, your lawyer can get, you can get your lawyer's legal fees paid by the other party if you succeed. You also have certain other, you can go to federal court. You can't go to federal court if you're not registered. And if you can't go to federal court, you can't go anywhere because they put you in a bind here. The federal courts have exclusive jurisdiction of copyright matters because copyright's national. I should have started with that, actually. There's no Florida copyright law versus Virginia copyright law or anything like that. And don't get fooled by the fact that there's Florida trademark law, because Florida trademarks aren't worth anything. I mean, they help you in Florida, but these days, if you're on the net or you want to distribute something nationally, which everyone does, it doesn't really help you to have a Florida trademark. So anyway, that's the difference. You get advantages which you can't get from WGA. It's not worthless because it is something where you can show, I filed this WGA thing in June of 2017, and you didn't even claim to have done your work until 2019. So that will help you that way. Now, the second question, what do you have to prepare? First, I'm going to give you the lousy answer you don't want to hear, which is you got to have some money. Partly that's to pay me, and you should have some capital anyway. I mean, one of the first things that I say, and this, I'm sorry to do this music thing, but we're doing what's called a sales funnel, I'm told, by our social media person. And it's all about people who own record labels. So my head's in the music field. But you're gonna need to have money so that you don't have to worry about this week's rent on your condo. You can actually put some money into your project. And part of that money, because you're dealing in a copyright milieu, there's no way you can avoid lawyers, really, because some of it, fair use versus derivative. Is this a derivative of something else I saw? Or am I standing on the shoulders of creative people who came before me, quote unquote, and therefore it's a fair use because, and I have a lecture on fair use that's about to hit the YouTube channel as well. That's not an area that's got bright lines in it, I hate to tell you. But there's certain things are fair use and certain things aren't. But so you need to have the money to pay a lawyer, and then you can do a lot of this research to find these producers, for example, that I'm talking about. Some of my clients want me to do it, which I think is sort of silly because they'll educate themselves if they go through that due diligence process, and they won't have to pay someone like me an outrageous amount per hour to do it. So I would encourage my clients to do it. But you need to have the money not to worry about the rent payment at the end of the month. I mean, that's what I would say. So that's one thing. Then if you do this, and if you can isolate, if you do what I'm talking about, which is try to isolate the producers that you really want to send this to, who will open the envelope, because they're not so big that they can afford not to open the envelope, because the networks have all these producers coming to them anyway. But the producers who are coming to them also need raw material. And so they will tend to open the envelope, and they will tend to respond to you. Some won't because they become big enough not to do it. But you'll have much better luck going to those people. And you need to pay a lawyer to negotiate that deal so that you won't be taken advantage of, because I wouldn't recommend going with someone who doesn't pass the shower test, but you may have to, because they may all be bullshitters. You just want to pick the bullshitter who's also gotten something on the screen at this network. And you just have to do with it. I mean, there are a lot of contexts in which your skin may crawl with this stuff, but that's what the business is. So, the part of the skill is getting to where you can puff yourself without actually lying and becoming the person whose shower test, the person that's the object of the shower test instead of the other way around. So anyway, I hope that answers some of the question. And I'm sorry about the money thing, by the way. One of the things I loved about PBS is they didn't have to, it didn't cost them anything to do all this stuff. And I felt good about that. A lot of my growing up years were the 60s. So in some ways, the idea of money being the only measure has always been antithetical to me, but that's my own personal shtick. There's nothing wrong with money. I mean, I like making it. I have to make it because I have a nice condo at 47th and Collins that I have to pay the maintenance on every month and all that stuff, right? Okay, so I have to worry about it. Yes, a twofer.
Hello again. I was just wondering if, going the agent route, like getting an agent or a manager to help facilitate this process versus going to a lawyer,
Yep. Oh, you mean what's the advantages and disadvantages?
I mean, what do you, because
for one thing, the agent will be working only on what lawyers call a contingent fee basis. If there's a sale, he gets X. Why is it usually 10%, sometimes more if you negotiate. It can't do more under the AFTRA, the SAG-AFTRA agreement, but let's assume it's 10%. The problem is getting into the agency. You know, if you want to try to get someone at ICC, you're not going to get them to look at your thing because they don't know you. Again, it's the same thing. You go around this circle and you better come to these agents with someone they know so that they will actually listen to you and take you seriously. And by the way, one of the problems, and I hope, I pray that you guys will alleviate this while I'm still on the earth, which is that South Florida is still not taken seriously enough. I mean, I know about the talent here, but we're not taken serious. It's still sort of suntan you, and it's it's a good place to go lie on the beach. It's not a good place to do business. There's still a little bit of truth in that. People are not. I was telling Brian before that one of the things that has made me unpopular with groups like this over the years, although now that we're maturing, I feel less like saying this, but there's a lack of professional rigor here. There is a lot of sort of, it's a good place to have a vacation. Try to get someone to show up on time. Or, I'll have people come into my office for an 11 o'clock meeting and they'll trail in at noon with 14 other people with them. I don't have enough chairs in the office. And they act as if, of course, I should still be waiting for them at noon, which, I can't do. Anyway, we still have that problem here. And I have had at least one filmmaker who did make a film. What was it called? It was too intellectual. It was all about a dispute between, I can't even remember his name, but I remember Henrik Ibsen's name, if anyone has read any of the stage plays that Ibsen authored. Enemy of the People is a great one. Hedda Gabler, I think that was his as well, right? Right. So he was sort of revolutionary for his time in that he actually thought that you women were human beings instead of just objects. This was a long time ago. This is the 1800s at some point. And he got into a public spat, as only intellectuals can do, with, I can't remember his name now, a Swedish intellectual who also wrote screenplays, or stage plays, sorry, there were no screens because it was before film. Because this guy lost his much younger wife, the guy who hated Ibsen, lost his much younger wife who had just seen Hedda Gabler. And he blamed Ibsen for the disaffection of his wife, whom he wanted to keep in the birdcage, the way men always had as far as he was concerned. And now he couldn't anymore. So there was a terrible, nasty sort of intellectual spat over this. That became a big rage in Europe. It was a big deal in Europe. You were either on one side or you were on the other side. And if you were in the sort of creative community, which then, remember, didn't involve recorded music because you couldn't do it, didn't involve radio because there wasn't any, it didn't involve TV or film because there wasn't any. So stage plays and things like that were terribly important to the intellectual life of Europe. And one of the other things we still have a problem with in the US is that we don't respect intellectuals. You'll have public intellectuals in places like France and Germany. And we don't have, who's a public, I guess, Noam Chomsky. We have a few, but they tend not to be honored greatly. We're a money, we're a money society, even though I hate saying that, but that's the bottom line is the bottom line in the United States. And you have to get used to that and play that game according to that rule. And try to keep as much of your intellectual and emotional integrity with you as you can while still navigating that problem in the U.S.
Well, Barry, I think I speak for everyone when I say you are definitely an intellectual that we appreciate and respect. So how about a huge round of applause?
Thank you.